Y'all, let me tell you about the biggest scandal that ever shook Texas. Back in 1850, there was this cotton plantation, stretched far as the eye could see. This here's Ada, beautiful young woman, 19 years old. Her hands, they worked those cotton fields from sun up to sundown, but her heart, it belonged somewhere it shouldn't. And this is Thomas, the master's eldest son, 24 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes. He had everything a man could want, except the one thing his heart desired. They'd meet in secret, y'all, out there in them cotton fields when the sun was fixin' to set. Just looking at each other, knowing their love was dangerous as a rattlesnake. Now Clara, she was the master's wife, 26 years old, married off like property, sittin' in that big house, feeling more trapped than anybody in them slave quarters. Samuel was Ada's brother, strong man, 25 years old. He worked in that big house, and his eyes, they found Clara's, and something happened that wasn't supposed to happen. Their hands almost touching over that tea service. Y'all, that right there, that was playing with fire. And in Texas back then, that fire could burn everything down. Under that Texas moon, Ada and Thomas held each other like the world was fixin' to end, and truth be told, their world was. Clara and Samuel, they found each other in them dark hallways, fingers intertwined for just a heartbeat, two souls, reaching across a divide that wasn't supposed to be crossed. Ada worked them fields even when her back was breaking, even when her hands bled. That's what survival looked like back then, y'all. Thomas watched her from that big plantation house, watching the woman he loved suffering under that Texas sun, and he couldn't do nothing about it, not openly anyway. Clara sat across from her husband at dinner. William was his name. Cold man, 50 years old. He looked at his newspaper more than he ever looked at his wife. When Samuel poured that wine, his hand trembled. Clara's eyes met his, just for a second. But that second, it said everything words couldn't. In an old abandoned cabin, they'd talk. Ada and Thomas, planning impossible dreams of freedom, dreams that'd get 'em both killed if anybody found out. Ada knew. She touched her belly and she knew. New life growing inside her. Joy and terror all mixed up together like a Texas thunderstorm. Clara looked in that mirror and saw her future crashing down, her hands on her belly, realizing the secret she carried could destroy everything. Thomas paced that room like a caged animal, knowing Ada was carrying his child, knowing what that meant in a place like Texas in 1850. Samuel prayed, down on his knees in that slave quarter, praying to God for a miracle, 'cause he knew a miracle was the only thing that could save them now. Then came the storm, y'all. Dark clouds rolling in like Judgment Day, wind howling through them cotton fields. Nature itself seemed to know something terrible was coming. Ada collapsed right there in the field. The pain hit her like lightning. Other women rushed to her side, knowing this baby was coming whether the world was ready or not. At the same time, up in that big house, Clara felt it too. That same pain. Two women, two different worlds, both fixing to give birth on the same stormy night. The midwife ran between them two places, through that pouring rain, through them lightning strikes, running from the big house to the slave quarters and back again. Ada lay there on that straw bed, surrounded by women who loved her, biting down on wood, sweat pouring down her face, rain beating on that roof like drums. Clara lay in her silk sheets and fancy bed, gripping them linens like they could save her, thunder shaking the whole house, shaking her whole world. Thomas stood outside that slave quarter in the pouring rain, soaked to the bone, trying to get to Ada, but them overseers, they wasn't letting him nowhere near. Samuel hid in them bushes near the big house, rain mixing with his tears, watching that lit window, knowing Clara was in there bringing his child into this cruel world. That midwife ran again through that storm. But this time her face showed something different, something that looked like pure shock. In that slave quarter, the midwife held up a baby, and y'all, that baby's skin was white as cotton. Ada's baby was white. Ada looked at her child with eyes wide as the moon. tears streaming down. She didn't understand. How could she? But she loved that baby. Lord, she loved him. The midwife climbed the marble stairs fast as her old legs could carry her. Her face, it told a story nobody wanted to hear. Up in that big house, she delivered Clara's baby. And when she pulled back that fine linen cloth, that baby was black. Clara's baby was black. Clara turned pale as a ghost, paler than she already was, looking at that dark-skinned baby, knowing her secret was written all over that child's face. That midwife sat between them two rooms, head in her hands, rocking back and forth. In all her years, she ain't never seen nothing like this. Ada held her white baby close, rocking him gentle, tears falling on his little face, whispering promises she didn't know if she could keep. Clara pushed that black baby away, hands shaking like leaves in a storm, the horror in her eyes. It wasn't about the child. It was about what that child meant. The storm passed. Sun started rising. But the real storm was just beginning. Y'all, Clara sat on that bed as dawn broke, still holding them bloody sheets, staring at nothing. Her whole world had just collapsed. Then she stood up, put on that silk robe, and her face, it changed, from shock to something cold, something desperate, something dangerous. She walked down them stairs, walked across that muddy ground in her fancy slippers, heading straight for them slave quarters, a woman on a mission. When Clara walked through that door, every woman in there stepped back. They knew power when they saw it, and power was walking in wearing green silk. Clara's eyes locked on Ada, cold and hard as Texas winter, a look that said, "You got something I need, and I'm fixin' to take it." Ada sat there holding that white baby, looking up at Clara standing over her. Two mothers, two babies, one impossible situation. Clara reached out her hands, demanding that baby, her rings catching the morning light. Ada backed against that wall, holding on tight. Ada's hands trembled as she gave up that white baby, tears falling on his little hands. Letting go, 'cause sometimes love means letting go to keep him alive. Clara turned and walked out with that white baby, her back straight as a board. Ada reached out to emptiness, a silent scream tearing through her soul. Clara came back carrying that black baby, wrapped in fancy cloth that couldn't hide what he was. Tears in her eyes now, but her face still hard. She put that black baby in Ada's arms. Their eyes met. Two mothers, both knowing they was doing something that would haunt them forever. Ada looked down at this dark-skinned child, touched his little face, and something happened, y'all. Love. It don't care about skin color. She fell in love right then and there. Clara walked back to that mansion, holding that white baby against her chest. Looked back once, just once. Guilt and desperation all mixed together. In that big house, Clara bathed that white baby, hands shaking, tears falling into that rose petal water, trying to wash away a sin that wouldn't never wash clean. Ada nursed that black baby in the slave quarter, rocking him, singing soft and low. Other women gathered round, silent witnesses to an impossible love. Thomas finally got in, ran to Ada, fell to his knees, looked at that black baby in confusion, and Ada just shook her head. Some truths are too dangerous to speak. Samuel watched through that window, saw Clara with that white baby, his hand pressed against the glass, knowing his child, but couldn't never claim him. Up in a second-floor window, a lace curtain moved. Old Margaret stood there, watching everything, seeing everything, an old woman who knew too much. Margaret sat in her rocking chair, 75 years old, white hair pulled back tight, watching through them old binoculars, seeing things she wished she hadn't. She'd seen it all that stormy night, through the rain and lightning, watched that midwife running back and forth, old eyes, but they still worked just fine. She'd watch Clara walk down to them slave quarters at dawn, watch the whole thing unfold, and she knew. Lord, she knew what it all meant. Margaret closed them curtains slow, turned to look at a family portrait, her son William when he was young, before he married Clara, before all this. Time passed, y'all. Weeks turned to months. Calendar pages fallen like autumn leaves. 2 months. Margaret kept that secret locked up tight. But secrets, they eat at you from the inside. Margaret lay in that fancy bed at night, eyes wide open, staring at angels painted on the ceiling. No sleep for the wicked or the witnesses. She got up one night, wrapped that black robe around her, walked with her cane to that old desk, opened a drawer with a gold key. Decision made. Her wrinkled hands wrote a letter, pen scratching on that paper. Each word was a death sentence. But she wrote it anyway. Truth has a way of demanding to be told. She sealed that envelope, pressed her ring into hot red wax. Morning light creeping through the window, knowing what she was about to unleash, but doing it anyway. William sat in his library, opened his mama's letter. His face, y'all, it went from confused to something dark, something dangerous, rage building like a Texas twister. He stood up so fast that leather chair went flying backward, face red as blood, veins popping in his neck. That letter crumpled in his fist, a man about to explode. William marched through that mansion, heavy boots shaking the floorboards, servants scattering like scared rabbits. They knew that walk. They knew that fury. He slammed open Clara's door. Door hit the wall so hard it cracked. Clara spun around from that mirror, holding that white baby. Fear. Pure fear in her green eyes. William held up that crushed letter, right in Clara's face. She went pale, paler than death, recognized her mother-in-law's handwriting. Knew. She knew it was over. Clara grabbed that baby, backed into the corner, like an animal cornered by a predator. William advancing, his shadow growing on that wall, getting darker. William stormed out, down them stairs, yelling for his overseers. Men with rifles and whips gathering fast, making plans. Terrible plans. A young house girl slipped out the back door, running fast as her legs could carry her, toward them slave quarters. Warning. She was bringing warning. She reached Ada, whispered urgent in her ear. Ada's face changed. She dropped that basket, grabbed that black baby quick. Other women, they understood. Run. Time to run. Ada ran through the darkness, wrapping that dark-skinned baby in an old shawl, looking over her shoulder. Moon barely giving light, shadows everywhere. Samuel appeared from them shadows, grabbed Ada's shoulders, their eyes met. Brother and sister, no words needed. He pointed to the forest, only chance they had. Samuel ran toward that big house one last time, climbed up that vine, muscles straining, determination in every move, going after Clara, after his child. He tapped on Clara's window. She opened it, startled. He made urgent gestures. Come now, bring the baby. They're coming. She understood. Death was coming for them all. Clara threw on a dark coat, wrapped that white baby in a plain blanket, took off her jewelry, left it on that dresser. Last look at her fancy room. Last look at that life. Samuel helped her down from that window, holding her, holding the baby. She stepped on uncertain ground. Them fancy shoes not made for running, but run she would. Ada waited at the forest edge, dark trees behind her, holding that baby close, hearing voices, seeing torches lighting up back at the mansion. They was coming. Clara and Samuel reached Ada. 2 women looked at each other, one white, one black, both mothers, both running for their lives, united by desperation and love. 3 figures entered that dark forest, branches breaking under their feet, babies crying soft, looking back, seeing them torches being lit. Last sight of that plantation, last sight of that prison. William stood in front of that mansion, surrounded by armed men, pointing furiously at the forest, dogs straining at their chains, barking like demons. Hunt was on, y'all. Them bloodhounds got released, 3 big dogs with their noses to the ground, drooling, teeth showing, running toward that forest, chasing the scent of fear. Ada, Clara, and Samuel ran through that dense forest, branches scraping their faces, roots trying to trip them, holding them babies tight, breathing hard, moon barely breaking through. Ada's bare feet was bleeding, stepping on rocks and thorns. Clara's fancy shoes tearing apart, Samuel breaking branches, leaving a trail of blood, Dogs getting closer. They reached a creek, dark water flowing. Stopped for just a second, heard them dogs baying closer. Had to decide. Into the water, only way to hide their scent. They waded through that cold creek, up to their knees, stumbling on underwater rocks, holding them babies above the water. Moon reflecting on the surface, dogs echoing through them trees. Climbed out on the other side, soaked through. Clara fell from exhaustion. Ada helped her up. Samuel looking around desperate. Forest even thicker ahead, but they kept moving. Torches visible through them trees, men yelling, dogs barking loud. The fugitives looked at each other, knowing they was being caught up to, panic in every breath. Samuel pointed to a rock formation, small cave hidden by vines. Last refuge, last hope. They ran toward it with whatever strength they had left. They squeezed into that dark cave, pressed against cold stone, covering the babies' mouths gentle, to keep 'em quiet, breathing as silent as possible. Darkness swallowing 'em whole. Outside that cave, them vines moved slightly, then went still. Natural camouflage. Moonlighting the entrance partial. Silence heavy as a gravestone. Dogs came close, sniffing hard. One stopped near them vines, barking. An overseer approached with his torch, lifting it high, lighting up the area. So close, y'all. Inside, Ada, Clara, and Samuel pressed against that rock, eyes wide with terror, hands shaking, sweat and creek water dripping. Them babies, miraculously quiet. That overseer looked straight at them vines, took a step closer, raised that torch higher. Another dog barked in the distance, pulled his attention away. He turned, whistled for the dogs, ran toward that other barking, leaving the cave area. Them torches moving away slow, voices getting quieter, but they still didn't move, didn't dare. Hours passed. Dawn started breaking. Light coming through that cave opening. The fugitives still frozen in the same spot, not daring to move. First rays of sun creeping in. Ada and Clara sat side by side now, light showing their faces, each holding a baby, looking at each other, tears of exhaustion and temporary relief. Samuel watching the entrance, still on guard. Wide shot from outside that cave, showing the dense forest all around, that cotton plantation visible far in the opposite direction. Path ahead uncertain, sky lightening with morning clouds.